This debate, rather fittingly, comes in the shadow of the NATO summit in The Hague yesterday, with the headline pledge to reach 5% of GDP on defence by the midpoint of next decade. And I echo remarks from across the House that we do indeed live in an increasingly volatile world, perhaps more volatile and more unpredictable than at any other point in the post-1945 era of Pax Europea and Pax Americana. We see the bloodiest conflict on European soil since the Second World War, death and devastation in the Middle East and across Africa, Asia and beyond. We on Civvy Street, in our comfort, perhaps sometimes guilty of forgetting just how fragile our freedoms and democracy are, and the threats posed to them. These values are not guaranteed. They have to be fought for, and we must be reminded of that. Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, we live in an age which is the historical exception, not the norm. Our way of life at home depends on our strength to defend it and how we project ourselves abroad. We recently celebrated the 80th anniversary of victory in Europe. Just a few generations back, still within the memories of many, this country was engaged in a fight for its very life and survival. We would do well to remember this, always. Thankfully, the brave men and women who serve to protect us today need no such reminder. Madam Deputy Speaker, I come from a military family. My late father served in the RNR, the Royal Naval Reserves. 2 of my 3 brothers have had long careers in His Majesty's Armed Forces. Ben is a brigadier in what I still insist on calling the Black Watch. As officer commanding Scotland when the late Queen died, he was in charge of making sure that everything went smoothly. I cannot tell you how proud I was of my baby brother Ben when it did. Yeah. And Johnny, now retired, was a Lieutenant Colonel in the Grenadier Guards. They have dedicated their lives in the service of our country, and I can assure everybody that their example and that of every soldier, sailor, airperson reinforces my knowledge that our military remains in the best of hands. I say, perhaps with a shred of bias, Minister, that Britain's armed forces are still the finest in the world. I speak with additional pride about my own constituency of Tiverton and Minehead, which is home to 4,577 veterans. It is a proud part of the country with a strong military tradition. I would like to take this opportunity to salute the fantastic presence of the Royal British Legion and other veteran organisations in my patch, particularly the wonderful Dunkirk Memorial House at the foot of the Contoc Hills and the Armed Forces breakfast clubs in Minehead and Bishop's Lydeard, which provide a sense of community. Having done lots of pro bono work with the Royal British Legion in a previous life, particularly around PTSD and hearing loss, this is a topic very close to my heart. And I will say now that I am absolutely delighted to hear the Minister announce that the Armed Forces Covenant will be included in legislation. It is, of course, a national obligation to look after those who have served us. Before I was elected, I had to try and help a young RAF veteran, Owen, and his family, including his young daughter, Autumn, who had just been diagnosed with autism. They had become homeless, if only that legislation had been in place there. And I know that my colleague, Councillor Claudette Harrower, who is responsible for the Covenant at Mid Devon District Council, will make sure that she endeavours to make sure that the very best has been done. The Armed Forces Covenant is not a charity. It is justice. Madam Deputy Speaker, we must be alive to the recruitment crisis currently bedeviling our armed forces. We must close that gap. I do fear, however, that we are not particularly helping ourselves in this regard. Allow me to draw attention to the plight of a young constituent of mine, which I suspect is a frustratingly similar story to a number of young people up and down the country. In February 2024, she gave up the chance to study A-levels to attend the Lichfield Assessment Centre, where in October 24 she passed the assessment where her scores were exemplary and such that she was accepted into the Intelligence Corps. However, by June of this year, some 16 months later, she still has not been given a start date and just receives occasional holding communications from the military authorities. Meanwhile, she is getting by with a series of menial part-time jobs, but has seemingly been left in the lurch by her army recruiters. I am not using her name because she's asked me not to, but I will give the Minister her details later in the hope that we can process this matter sooner rather than later. Young people like my constituent who are prepared to serve their country and so represent the best of their generation deserve better, and I would ask the Minister to comment on this privately. It's okay. I would ask the Minister to commit today to publishing detailed targets for processing applications, to allocating sufficient personnel to the recruitment pipeline, and to providing all successful candidates with a concrete start date within a reasonable time period. I would like to put on the record, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the Veterans Minister was known as a legend when he served in the Royal Marines, and to me, he remains a legend today. I can send him an email and receive a response within 48 hours, which is enormously helpful to my constituents, the people I serve. In finishing, I'm going to quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He said, "I am a patriot, but not a nationalist." And so, as I finish my speech today, I reiterate his words. I speak as a proud patriot, but never, ever a nationalist.
Hear, hear.